What is up, DS3 TV? We are back for another video. Almost done shooting all these videos for the day, and that shall be I should call it a night. Here it's like 1 a.m. I've been up all day, so yeah, this is gonna be very nice after the next video. I think I'm done shooting videos for the week, but yeah, so um. Yeah, let's get into this one. It's how the Greeks created the first European state. So yeah, I'm actually very happy. This is a recommended video. Thanks to the person who recommended it. Also, recommend me more videos in the comment section down below. And I'm so happy you guys found a Kraut video that is less than an hour long. Cause I literally want to react to his videos, but hour-long videos take a lot of time. So it I react to those once in a blue moon. Some I want to try to react to one of those 1 hour videos, probably once a month or something like that. Cause yeah, those videos take a long time. The 1 hour ones are so long. So, not like they're bad, but they just take so long. And I don't always have that much time. So, yeah, I don't always have that much time with, work and stuff like that. But yeah, let's get into this video. And yeah, it should be pretty fun to see how this happened. And yeah, let's see. Play.
When societies collapse, more often than not, what replaces them are regionalized, smaller social structures. That, at least, most certainly happened after the Bronze Age collapse in Greece. Instead of forming singular, large entities such as kingdoms, the Bronze Age Hellenic world collapsed into a set of multiple little polities and palace states. Entities that would come to shape what we today refer to as the Greek city-states. In the texts written by Plutarch, we find accounts of what Greece was like at the time by reading about the travels of Theseus, an illegitimate son of the Athenian king, returning to Athens to reclaim his rights. Theseus had to battle bandit gangs on his route to Athens, and although these accounts are probably more myth than fact, they are indicative of the chaos and instability that impacted large parts of ancient Dark Age Greece. Individual polities disconnected from each other with lands in between controlled by bandit groups. The polities themselves were governed by kings or tribal families. In Athens, the rulers were tribal families known as the archons. Although we often think of ancient Greece almost in terms of an enlightenment before our time, it was by and large a set of hierarchical tribal societies steeped in tradition. The ruling families were organized in kinship groups. These families were not the modern Christianized nuclear family of our day and age, but groups of several units and branches related to each other with a patriarchal family head. These families had their norms and rules that they enforced upon themselves, and also to a degree their own religion. Like in all tribal societies under kinship structures, the worship of ancestors stood at the center stage of ancient Greek family life. Every Greek household had a shrine or an altar with a fire to be kept burning all day and all night, and where ritual offerings to the spirits of the ancestors were made. In many ways, the ancient Greek polis was
That's a pretty cool skeleton right there. Remember me.
society in which the dead held sovereignty over the living. Land was tied to the ancestors of those living on the land. Kinship determined who you were and what your status within family and society was. Rights and property were tied to kinship. It was forbidden in ancient Athens to sell one's property, as selling such would mean selling the ancestor shrine, and through that betraying and splitting away from the kinship group. Women had close to no rights whatsoever. Their legal status was dependent upon their ability to...
Which, if you've seen the video from the other day, well, I don't know how these videos are going to come out, but you will see the video soon. We learn more about that later this week.
Produce offspring and, more importantly, heirs to continue the family lineage. If you ever wondered where the cultural practice of the groom carrying the bride through the door of their new home came from, it's ancient Greece. A traditional practice by which the wife was introduced into a new family kinship group. Her ties to her old kinship group were severed and she became part of the new group and its ancestors. Large tribal groups developed out of the ancestral worship by families who claimed descendancy from gods such as Zeus, Hera or Poseidon, all of which lends itself to the argumentation that religion is something that developed out of ancestor worship and that polytheism developed through family groups and tribes worshipping different gods, acknowledging a common ancestor or each other's gods, to then work in establishing and ordering a society together. This is probably how the first Greek polis came to be. When new Greek cities were founded, a common ritual was for the city's founders to dig a trench and bury within it soil from the previous city. An abandoned city was considered to be a city abandoned by the gods, as it had been abandoned by its people who worshipped their ancestors, and those ancestors were tied to the soil. The act of burying soil of the abandoned city was an act of connecting to a past and continuing it. When Greeks went to war, they did so for their city, not just for a cause, but for their family, kinship group, and the ancestors themselves. Loss of the city meant loss of the ancestors and a loss of one's gods. It's possible that the word patria, or fatherland, as in a land of one's fathers, comes from this social arrangement, which is why
that was a very interesting picture right there.
Patriotism, as in the citizen's duty to serve and protect one's city, was such a highly praised virtue among both ancient Hellenic and Latin civilizations, and why being exiled from one's city, and thereby also exiled from one's family, kinship group, and the burial site of one's ancestors and their shrines was considered the worst of all punishments in ancient...
Yeah, because it would completely destroy all the respect that you have gained over the time, and plus, you know, like all the kinship that you had made over that time, and plus when that's like how the culture works is very I don't know the word I was gonna say, but debilitating. Yes, debilitating and demoralizing for you.
Mediterranean city-states. The individual per self did not exist, and without family, one was nothing. As these cities grew in population, the ruling families of these polities increasingly saw the need for established written codes and laws to organize their societies. One of the first was written by Draco for the city of Athens. Often described as the first Athenian constitution, it is actually more a set of harsh punishments for violations, hence the common colloquial term draconian.
That is a very nice blood dinosaur, and I think, you know, whoever drew that, they deserve some money for that. It looks nice. If Kraut drew it, give him more money, give him more views. I like it.
The law concerns itself with tribal rules and blood feuds, how to punish murders, how to settle family disputes, almost always in favor of brothers, fathers and sons, with daughters and mothers being secondary. Draco's laws are in many ways tribal laws, norms and customs, not that different from the tribal laws and norms and customs that we find within modern kinship tribal societies, be they in the hills of Afghanistan, the Arabian desert or the mountains of Albania. By 600 BC, Athens was ruled by an oligarchy of interconnected tribal families, descendants of the city's founders. These were kin groups who vied for power and, after the end of the monarchy, agreed to a system of elections amongst themselves to settle political matters and elect an archon. The archon would be an effective prime minister of the city for a one-year term. However, this system of governance started to become increasingly unstable with the growing population of Athens. Agnatic lines of kinship groups started to branch out considerably with the rising population, producing more disconnected family groups. More importantly though, Athens started growing and increasing a non-noble and non-tribal population. Lower castes of society started increasingly growing in ranks, from ordinary workers to craftsmen to fishermen to farm laborers to slaves and others. A citizenry started to emerge. What's more, many of the lower castes of Athenian society had lost their citizenship rights and privileges through being in debt. Athenians in debt were able to put their own personhood, or that of their immediate family, on the line as a security for the loan they had taken, a means by which the Athenian noble families kept them under control through debt patronage, in essence rendering people in debt into slavery and thereby in service of the oligarchic networks of families. There were two political houses of representation in Athens during that time. The Ecclesia, which was open to every single Athenian citizen and the place of discussion and the settling of disputes, and the Areopagus, which was the actual legislative body and membership of which was restricted to former archons only. This political framework was increasingly unstable and the source of rising social conflict when Solon became archon in 594 BC. He acquired this position through the support of the underprivileged classes and instituted enormous changes to the structure of the Athenian society. First, Solon banned the practice of debt on the security of the personhood of the debtor, meaning people could no longer sell themselves into slavery. Second, Solon implemented a land reform that divided the farmland surrounding Athens up among the tenant farmers, creating a class of small landowners. Third, he banned restrictions on movement, allowing this new class of farm owners to participate within the political process of Athens. And fourth, he proceeded to expand the office of archon to 9 offices, thereby expanding political representation. With these 4 measures, Solon appeased the lower classes of Athens and gave them more political power at the expense of the noble families who had until then ruled Athens. But Solon also had to ensure the goodwill and cooperation of the noble families, which he did. He categorized Athenian society into 4 classes sorted by income, of which only the top 2 were able to hold the office of archon. He then created a new chamber of representation called the Boule, which would act as the executive branch of the government, members of which could only be from the 4 main aristocratic families of Athens. And these 4 aristocratic families were also the only ones who could become archons. However, the pool of political representation had through this been greatly expanded, and this system offered checks with which lower classes, through popular participation, could enforce constraints and checks on the elites who ruled them. What started to happen here with Solon was that the transformation of Athens from a tribal society of norms into a state society of laws started taking shape. Solon next abolished Draco's laws. The laws that Solon replaced them with are noted for creating a semblance of equality before the law for all Athenians, no matter their class. Solon accomplished all of these changes within 1 year of office, and then voluntarily went into 10 years of exile to resist the temptation of meddling with his accomplishments in his own favor. What followed Solon were a series of tyrants who tricked themselves into power or seized such by military force. However, these tyrants continued the construction process of an Athenian city-state that increasingly abandoned tribal structures. Religious ceremonies were made public festivities, thereby abandoning the once strictly private nature of religious celebration. Courts and road networks were established to better connect the surrounding countryside into Athens through jurisdiction and infrastructure. Athens started to develop a citizenry that saw itself as distinctively Athenian, no longer just as classes and blood relatives within a tribal social structure, but as a society in which they shared and lived together as Athenians. The tyrants were removed in 508 BC, and the archonship democracy returned. With it came a new set of reforms. Taxes were introduced on property and on wealth. These taxes were used to build the harbor of Piraeus and thereby expand Athenian trade. The 5th century BC also came with the discovery of rich silver ore deposits in the hills of Attica surrounding Athens. That silver wasn't grabbed by tribes to enrich themselves. Instead, after debate, concession...
I just thought about it. We're watching a lot of Greek stuff this week. Tell me if you like it, because I just thought about it. Like, this isn't the first Greek thing we're watching, so... Well, this isn't the first Greek thing I'm watching. It's probably going to be the first Greek thing you're watching, but we're watching a lot of Greek things this week, so... Be excited for that.
And the vote, the decision was made to use the silver mines to build an Athenian navy, to then add an additional tax on the wealthy to maintain that navy, and to establish a minted Athenian currency, furthering the process into statehood. On a side note, ancient Greek currencies are important to archaeologists. Every Greek city and kingdom had its own, with its own symbols on the coins. The Athenian owl, the Macedonian sun, the rosebuds of Rhodes, the Pegasus of Corinth, and many more. They allow us to determine where trade was historically facilitated, and when we find an ancient ship, we can tell exactly where it came from because of the coins. The only exception to this is Sparta. Spartans used simple metal rods as currency and rejected coins.
What? Here's this metal rod. Take like 5. I think we use 5 of these.
Because metal rods could easily and quickly be melted down into spear tips in times of war. Sparta did so because it was a militaristic exception to the state-building process throughout Greece. To cement this new system of taxation in
I could see North Korea doing that.
Athens, additional social reforms were required, which Athenians did by abolishing the 4 noble families and replacing them with 10 new tribes of Athens. Each of those was divided into 30 subgroups that were further divided into subgroups, creating a total of 139 political units, thereby replacing the tribal structures and creating legislative constituencies. These constituencies were called demes and were widely spread throughout the region of Attica. This finally destroyed the tribal structures on which Athens had once been founded on and replaced it with a state structure. Every man over the age of 30...
What's up? The camera died, but hey, good news. I got like 7 batteries, so that's not a problem anymore. So yeah, let's keep going through the video, and yeah, let's get into it. And we gotta put this in. Okay, and play.
Executive chamber. Because there were term limits of 1 year and because every member could at best only serve 2 terms, this meant that political power was incredibly accessible. Almost every man of Athens at some point in his life served as a politician, which worked as a counterweight to the noble family elites. The main means of popular control in this society was ostracism by law, by which if the citizens of a city, of which up to 6,000 could vote, could anonymously vote once a year to exile a citizen from the city. The fear of this exile by vote, which in essence was a populist mechanism of checks and balances, kept the city's nobles and elites from abusing power and having to, at the very least, abide by a standard that appeased the rest of the citizenry.
That's a pretty good standard, though. Yeah, checks and balances are always a good thing to keep your government in check. You know, people in higher parts of the government in check.
This Athens, the city-state, would be the Athens we all know from popular history, from its wars with Persia and Sparta, its philosophers, its plays and theatres and more. The creation of the Athenian state resulted in an explosion of wealth, commerce, creativity and power, facilitated through an unshackled citizenry that was freed from tribal constraints by the formation of a state. One of my favorite ways of displaying this gradual transformation is by looking at ancient Greek statues. Greeks started building statues after opening trade with Egypt. It is very clearly visible how Greek statues imitated Egyptian statues. However, after 500 BC and the creation of the Athenian state and its citizenry, something changed. The statues became more expressive and lively in Greece, while in Egypt, whose institutions didn't undergo a transformation into citizenry statehood, art did not change much until the Egyptians were conquered by outsiders. Ancient Greece is a weirdly romanticized thing in our day and age, inspired by writers like Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who wrote in praise of the virtues of the ancients as they sought to destroy the feudal order of the present nobles. Robespierre praised ancient Greece as the ultimate manifestation of liberty. Similar undertones shaped the writings of Edward Gibbon.
I mean, they quite literally gave us our checks and balances. Like, we wouldn't have checks and balances at all if we didn't, like I'm saying, America, if we didn't, like, if Greek didn't do that and like show that you could have a democracy like that work, probably America wouldn't have worked, honestly. And France, but America first and then France, because America had their independence longer than France.
And other Enlightenment writers who sought to paint an image of an ancient and lost freedom of the classical era, one that was destroyed by the barbarism of medieval Christianity. It's why we find so much Greek symbolism in our modern republican and democratic institutions. But their romantic visions, as we know today, were untrue. Ancient Greek society was by no means a secular society, let alone a humanistic society. The building blocks...
We're not even a secular society. We still use God in the in like most things that you have to say, like the national anthem and stuff.
Ancient society.
Sorry. Yeah, you still have to use God in most of the stuff that you say. So yeah, it's not really secular. I mean, we have a separation of church and state, you know, at this point, but it really wasn't always secular. So that's not something that always happens.
Were family, the worship of ancestors, and tribal loyalty. Individual liberties did not play much of a role in these societies beyond the individual's service to family, tribe, and eventually the state. That's why when fascism emerged, it also posed with ancient Hellenic symbolism, and why YouTubers who pose as intellectual heavyweights do so with ancient Greek statues as their profile pictures or name themselves after ancient Greek institutions, and therefore are always somewhat laughable. Nevertheless, ancient Greek social development is very interesting to us because through its documentation we can see how the process of development from a tribal society into a state society transpires. How that change is facilitated through the creation of institutions that create a public participation and interest within the matters of the state, as well as limit state power and its abuse. Ancient Greece is not an ancient liberty worth idealizing, but it gives us a great insight into how the first states came to be and how societies transition from tribal into state structures. We can observe how loyalty to a tribal family clan was replaced by loyalty to a communal state, how norms and customs were replaced by laws, and how structures of restraint and control were implemented to shackle rulers into accountability. One of the most valuable history lessons that ancient Athens can teach us is how states are created. In the next video we will talk about Russia, and we will try to answer the question of why Russia is so authoritarian, by taking a deep look at the history of its state institutions and where they came from. Subscribe if you want to see that, and do not forget to like, share and comment.
I might have watched that, didn't I? You guys tell me in the comment section if you want me to watch it, you will tell me to watch it. But yeah, talk to you guys in the next video. Also subscribe to the channel. I want to get 1,000 subscribers by my birthday, September 13th. And also, click the little arrow next to the video, and yeah, click the link in the description, and click that heart, and follow me on Twitch. So that way you can see when I'm going to be streaming next week, and when I'm going to be streaming, not what I'm going to be streaming, when I'm going to be streaming next week. And yeah, should be a pretty fun time. And yeah, talk to you guys in the next video, and peace.